Hello, fellow Movie Crusaders, and welcome to another episode of the Movie Crusaders Talk About. Today's episode, we are talking about the potential death of movie theaters and how the recent layout over the last few years, especially the last 2 years, has definitely seen a gradual change from people going to the theaters to basically not doing that anymore. My name's Sean Waskrug. This is Brian Michaels. Brian, this was a topic that you actually wanted to talk about because I asked you yesterday. We were kind of figuring out what we wanted to do for March, and I was like, "Is there anything recently that's been coming up that you want to talk about?" And you said that you had been talking to a few people at work about this, so we decided to touch base and do our show about this, which it's a very important episode because lately that this has been something that at least over the last 2 years with COVID and the coming back from COVID, this is definitely something that has definitely changed.
Well, this is something that for years and years has been
Even before
kind
COVID.
of the big question mark in people's heads, and how things are changing. And but in the last couple of years, obviously things have taken such gigantic leaps that have led to more and more people asking the question, like how long will movies be along? How long will movie theaters be around? What will they look like? What kind of movies will be released there? So yeah, it's just something that now more than ever is kind of something worth discussing.
I think for me, and then like I said, I'm gonna let you kind of drive most of this because this is the topic you want to talk about. But I'll get my little thing out of the way. I remember, oh god, it was about 6, 7 years ago. This is back when we really only had like Netflix, Hulu, the occasional Amazon Prime stuff, where it was, you'd go to Netflix to watch TV shows, not necessarily new movies or anything like that, or you could go watch old movies. And same thing with Prime, you can rent older films and stuff like that, and even Hulu, where the streaming service wasn't a big deal for them because we still had movies. And like they were coming out with, oh, we're getting ready to do 4D theaters where they can shoot water at you, which they still did. And that was the big facet, but and the ticket prices were, raising up and going higher and higher and higher. And then all of a sudden, Netflix and Amazon Prime and everybody were like, "Hey, we have our own films." And then those movies started to get a little more popular, a lot more eyes on them. I think was it Roma was the first real big Netflix movie that got caught like Oscar eyes and
I
stuff.
believe so. I mean, some other ones got some nominations, like Beasts of No Nation, things like that. But
Yeah.
that was the first Beasts of Southern Wild. Sorry, but that was the first big one that got Best Picture nomination
And
and everything. So
and so people were starting to like, hey, Netflix is doing stuff too, and then Prime and Hulu and every other streaming service in the world kept coming out with their own movies. And people were like, "Oh, I want to see these. I want to see this movie." It's like, "Well, you can only see it if you go to this streaming service. It's not going to be out in theaters and stuff like that." And then, of course, COVID hit. Now, COVID obviously, no one expected a pandemic to come and just completely wipe the board of movie theaters. I mean, when literally we have like you and I we weren't doing our show by then, but we would always talk at that point. We're like, hey man, Quiet Place Part 2's coming, and Bloodshot and all this stuff, and then it just, hey, it's been postponed until whenever. Hey, this one's going down, this one's going down, this is postponed, to the point where it's like we can't predict anything when movies are going to come out anymore. Because I mean, granted, we ran through postponements of movies because they wanted to work on them a little bit better, or they need to touch some things up with reshoots, but never to the point of they're completely redoing the whole calendar because of
that and the fact that movie theaters closed down for months.
my movie theater that I worked for. We were in Omaha. We were a 24 theater movie theater. We were the best movie theater in the city. Which we had like 7 movie theaters in Omaha. It shut down like 2 years ago, or no, it was last year. It was last year, not 2 years ago. Last year, and I was like, that was something I never thought I'd ever hear. Was that my theater would shut down because that was the biggest theater. It had IMAX theaters. It had all that stuff. It was the biggest theater in Omaha, and it shut down. And I actually asked someone in Omaha. I was like, hey, is AMC Oakview 24 was the theater? I was like, it's still up, right? And did they knock it down? And they go, no, it's still up. It just looks like a ghost town. Like the building's still there. There's no cars there. They haven't done anything. No one's bought it out. No one's done anything. It just looks like a shell.
Well, that was the thing is I was talking about like during when the whole COVID thing and like whole theater shut down, like basically whole theater chains, like everything basically shut down. Part of it because there were no movies coming out, but part of
Yeah.
it because of like, quarantines and things like that. And then the question started to become, will they open up again? And if so, how many of them will open up again? Because so many that once they close, they decide, well, we'll just keep that one closed because it was, our company was losing money on certain locations and stuff anyway. AMC was on the brink of bankruptcy, and then they got brought back, things like that. And so that just changed so much. And like you said, many of them, like you said, the one was the biggest one in your town is
Yeah.
gone. It's like, are there other theaters there? And if so, are they, do people have access to the movies they wanted to see?
Yeah. And then even where I'm at now is a small town. We have one movie theater. It's 8 theaters. I can drive 40 minutes to a theater that's bigger, still not as
Mm.
big as the one I had in Omaha. And even once everything kind of started to, I don't want to say go back to normal, but movie theaters started to open up again. The one that was 40 minutes away, they opened up. Because I remember oh God, what was the first movie? It was summer of last year. Or no, 21. Yeah, it was summer of like last year, summer of 2020, or something. I think it was Tenet. I think Tenet was the first one, so 2020. Right, 2020. Yeah, Tenet wasn't last year. And Tenet was like the first movie. Like, hey, it's going to be released in theaters, and I remember going there to see it. It was opening day, and it was a ghost town. Like no one. Like I had the whole theater to me and my dad
Mhm.
seeing Tenet, and my theater, the one locally for me, they didn't open up for another like year after that. So I had to keep driving every week to that 40, every 40, minutes to go to see that one because that was the only way I could see these movies that were in theaters only. And then you have HBO Max and Disney Plus that came into play with, hey, here's these big films, Godzilla, Kong, Mulan. I mean, the list goes on and on. Like like Dune, big budget films that were made for theaters, and then going, if you pay this much, you can watch them at home. And for me, I was like, and we'll get into kind of the real crux of why I chose to do this, but I started to go, okay, I'll watch them at home instead of going to the movie theater, which I thought I would never do. Because me working at a movie theater, I am a movie theater lover. I love going to theater. You obviously are as well. But it did get to the point where it was like, if it's released on HBO Max and at the theater or Disney Plus HBO Max, I choose to stay at home and watch it. If it's only in theaters, then yes, I'm going to go see it. But then that's where the drastic turn happened, where I was just like, wow, did I start becoming a person that doesn't like going to the movie theaters anymore? And there's reasons for it. There are actual real reasons why, but then we get movies like Spider-Man No Way Home. And now this weekend with Batman, where you can only see it in the theaters. And then even if we go back last month with Jackass Forever, where we didn't think that was going to release theaters. You thought it was going to get on Paramount Plus, but it ended up going strictly to
I
theaters.
really thought of any of the movies that were likely to get bumped, that would be the one, but they held
And
too. I'm glad they did
yeah,
too because it's fun to see in the theater with people.
that's where I was going to go with it. I went and saw it, and there's a lot of people there, and it was so much fun seeing Jackass Forever in a group of people. Granted, would I have still laughed very hard at home watching that on a streaming service? Sure. Would I have laughed even, as hard as I did in the movie theater? Probably not, because I was laughing as a group of people. Same thing when, Endgame. When I saw Endgame opening night, and
Mm.
when the Milner
Milner.
scene happened, and literally the whole audience just lost their minds. And I admit this, and we'll talk about this again when we finally do the topic episode of Man Tears. The atmosphere in that theater of opening night, because at least for me, opening night of Endgame in my town, we got hit by a tornado, and everything was a mess. But the theater 40 minutes away was open. So like we had to cancel our tickets for here, and we had to drive there to go see it, and sold out. But the moment when the Avengers Assembles moment, everyone in the theater was just so overwhelmed. Like it was a collective, like just like I was in tears. And it wasn't because I was like, oh my God. It's just like it's not a sad moment, but it was just like, oh my God, this is amazing that this is actually fucking happening. I was just so overwhelmed by everything. I literally had tears streaming down my face, and I still, anytime I watch that scene with the way they, the score and everything, I still get welled up because it's, like, it's such an amazing scene. But being in front of that theater with everyone just losing their shit over it was an amazing experience. And Spider-Man No Way Home was the same way. When, spoiler alert for a movie that's been out for over 2 months now, when Andrew Garfield jumps through the portal, I know everyone loses their mind. Everyone lost their minds in my theater when Daredevil showed up, which I was like, oh my god, people love Daredevil in this theater with me. Sweet, I wasn't the only person that acknowledges Daredevil. But seeing the people, like in there are bad experiences and then there are good experiences, but these were all great experiences. And it was just one of those things where I can't get that at home. I can't.
Well,
And
so that's the thing is when
yeah.
it comes down to is the community experience is really what makes theater going what it is. Because I mean, well, I'll talk about this more later, but I mean, the home experience has changed so much over the years. It used to be so different than you'd see a movie in theaters, but now it's like you can almost get the same as far as visual and audio experience if you have a good setup at home. But you're not going to have that same thing when you're in a theater full of people. And even just I've been sitting in empty theaters before, and it still just feels so much better when it's this big, gigantic screen. Just you're immersed in this thing, and nothing I think can replace that. I mean, do I think every movie needs to be seen that way? No. I mean, I watch plenty of movies at home myself, but I would be very disappointed if movie theaters ever completely went away.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things where, are we hitting an age where, yeah, like you said, not every movie needs to be seen in a movie theater. So then it's like, what classifies as a movie worth seeing in a movie theater? I mean, you got your MCU, but then again, Black Widow, you had the option to watch that one at home and not seeing it in the theaters. And you have like for me, Kong Godzilla should have been a must-see theater experience for me, but HBO Max dropped it, and I chose to watch it at home. And I was like, oh, because that was mainly because my local theater was still not open yet, and I didn't want to drive 40 minutes to go see it when I could literally see it at home, basically for free. And I was like, well, as soon as they release it, here, I'll see it in the theaters, and I never did. But that was a movie that deserved to be seen in theaters, and I never got to see it in the theater. But that's the thing is, like, have we now reached an age where only like the biggest films, like the Batman and Spider-Man No Way Home and Endgame, and like I'm thinking of like the bigger movies that come out the rest of the year. I mean, you got your Aquaman, pretty much superhero movies,
Yeah.
and Jurassic World Dominion. I always want to say Domination. I don't know why. Where those are movie theater experiences, and then like your comedies and the occasional rom-com that comes out, which is that's such a streaming service movie now that like you barely see rom-coms in theaters anymore. But all those are just like, yeah, they might release them in theaters, but people are willing to wait the 30, 60, 90-day window to wait and watch that at home.
Well, that's just it. Well, let me back up first. I mean, like when I'm going to back way up to start with, when movies first started, way back in the dawn of man, when I was young. No. But I mean, aside from live entertainment, going to see people performing on a stage, movies was all there was. Okay, so people went to the movie. Everybody went to the movies. It was a huge thing. That's why Gone with the Wind, played for years and became the greatest, box office success of all time, adjusted for inflation and all this kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And because these same people just go to the movie, that's the only option. Then TV comes out. Obviously, people can watch stuff at home. Now, granted, it's small, it's black and white. There's not a lot on it, but it is another entertainment option. Then you get to home video, where you can start watching these movies at home after a while. You get to cable TV, obviously add-in stations, but now you have between streaming channels, streaming services, you have thousands of channels on cable or whatever. People have endless viewing options, endless competition for movies. So it's like, for people to choose to leave their home and go to a theater and watch a movie is not only a matter of what the movie is, it's a matter of what there's all this, and that's not even counting things like video games that people, much more immersive experiences for a lot of people that they want to do that instead. So it's like there's so much competition that I think that's part of what is causing movie theaters to die off. It's just because the competition in entertainment. as far as what movies, what the future of it, it's I think part of the problem is the movie theaters are making less money.
Mm.
So they decide to raise their prices to make up for that, which is just going to force more people to not go. So that's not the way to go. One thing they've tried to do is like try to turn it into a premium experience that you can't get at home, because yeah, you can have great big TVs and great sound systems at home, but you can't have an IMAX screen, and you can't have this large format things. You can't have we're going to put these recliners in the theaters. We're going to have dine-in service. We're going to have all this other shit. But the problem is, what does that do? It probably makes them have to charge more for tickets and things
Oh,
like that.
absolutely. It definitely is a lot more money.
And for me, well, it's funny because my closest theater, I've been waiting forever for them to get like the I just want the recliners and stuff, that nice spacious seating. And I finally asked, like, you guys ever gonna get that? Because all the other AMC's like closer, one in the suburbs got them. Like, oh, you know what? We were scheduled to do a whole remodel and get the recliners, and we're gonna get the bar and all that kind of stuff, which I'm glad they didn't put the bar. Last thing I wanted was drunk people in my theater.
Yeah.
But they're
We
like,
already deal with that.
but then COVID hit, and so those plans have been scrapped for now. I'm like, oh, son of a bitch.
Yeah, like my local theater was supposed to have a big remodel. They were gonna add like 3 more theaters. They're gonna get a bowling alley attached to it. They're gonna do like basically kind of make it like almost like a big like kind
Entertainment
of
complex.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like yes, because like bowling, I gotta drive an hour to go bowling. I love bowling. And I was like, oh man, I really want to go bowling, but I really don't want to drive an hour to do it. But I heard, hey, we're going to attach a bowling. I'm like, yes, I can actually go bowling now whenever I want. And then the tornado happened, which a lot of the money that was going to go into building that kind of went into rebuilding the town from the tornado. And then COVID hit on top of that. And it just kind of, I don't know if they're ever going to do that now, which sucks. But that's the one thing too, is like, especially before I moved down here to this small town, Louisiana, my theater was started to do the bar, and it was starting to do like this, like, do you want steak in your movie theater? It's like,
Well, the dine-in
no,
thing,
because
luckily my theater has never had. I've never been in a dine-in theater, and I'm so glad I'm not, because I can't imagine the idea of people, first of all, walking in and out with your food.
yes,
Second of all,
I
people
felt it was
playing away with
annoying.
knives and forks and stuff, eating it.
That's exactly what I was gonna say. It's like, because the last thing I
Mm.
want, if I'm sitting in a dark ass movie theater, is try to cut my steak in the dark. Now, granted, you got the theater screen, but still, you're in the dark, and then hear that. I was like, shut the dude, stop cutting your steak, man. It's like, I don't want that. And
It's
the
bad
last
enough
thing
when
I
people
want
eat
to do,
popcorn too noisily.
yeah, the last thing I also want to do is be sitting next to some dude who ordered something and him not like the way it's cooked, and then have him argue with the waiter about his food. I was like, dude, shut the fuck up. I'm trying to watch the movie.
Yeah, and I don't know if you're walking in with food, people's orders throughout the thing. Yeah.
Exactly. It's just like, I don't even like the whole recliner deal, because it's like, you're just trying to get me to fall asleep while watching the movie now. I don't
The funny
want
thing
that.
is, in the theaters with recliners, I have actually seen people, usually families, like whole families, but sometimes couples, they'll walk in and they'll have blankets and shit with them because they're gonna lay
I
back
don't
and
trust
cuddle up, and
you. I
you
don't
know what's going
trust
on
you
under the
with the
blanket
blanket.
too,
I don't trust you, what you're doing under that blanket.
right?
Let's be real here, people. Come on. The movie theater is supposed to be a hookup spot for a lot of people. I broke up a lot of hookups when I worked at the movie theater. I don't want you coming in there with a blanket. No, because I'm the one's got
Sean
to
the
clean up
cock
after
blocker
you.
Wasserkrug.
What's that?
Sean the cock blocker Wasserkrug.
I was. Some of my favorite stories was breaking up people trying to hook up in movie theaters. But that's one thing too. Is like you said, like they want to make the experience more, so they raise the prices. But here's the biggest problem that was really kind of the crux of why I don't necessarily like going to the movies anymore, and mainly my small town one. The tickets are more expensive, but they're paying the employees dick. I left my job. I was getting paid. I was a high school kid. Granted, this was 2000, 2004. So obviously pay was different, back then. We sound so old by saying that. And I was, in high school, I was working 50-hour weeks. At 16 years old, I was working 50 hours, which was probably breaking some kind of law by doing
Yeah.
that. And I finally graduated high school, and I was like, hey, I'm going to college. I need more money because I have bills and crap to pay. I was getting paid $6.10 an hour. I asked for a 90-cent raise because I was management. And they just said, there's the door. I was like, it's $7. Like, come on. We make how much a weekend with all these people coming in? You can't give me $7. I've been here 4 years. And I left. And that's the other problem too, is that more and more now, and this could just be us being crotchety older men now. I can't stand and I just was praising the theater experience with groups of people, stuff like that. But there are times where it's like I fucking can't stand the people that go to movies now. And they're either on their fucking phones, like, let's take a picture of us in the theater. You're in the dark. You know what it looks like? It's a black background and you guys stand there. You can take that same picture outside. It looks the exact same thing. Or let me Snapchat while I'm in the theater. Let me take a picture of the screen's credits so you guys know I'm in this movie. No one fucking cares, okay? You can just say, like how I do, hey, I'm in this movie. Review's going to be up tonight. I don't need to take a picture of the screen as the movie's on when the lights are off and everyone's trying to watch this movie and you hear a flash in your theater. I want to punch you in the face.
That's the thing is if you look at the reasons why, you look at, I mean, they've done tons of polls and surveys and things on this, and the same reasons always come up for why people go to movie theaters. One, the prices, which they've gotten ridiculous.
Whether it be food or tickets.
Well, yeah, the tickets to start with, but concessions obviously are insane because it's like, and I know the whole argument is, oh, well, that's where theaters make all their money. They only get a small portion of the box office, and I get that, but charging that much for a pop or a popcorn, it's just asking people to smuggle in food.
Oh,
and it's like nobody's, and it's like if instead of having an $8 drink or whatever the hell it is, a $6 drink, charge $3, and I bet you'll sell more than twice as much, and you'll make more money.
If you don't do free refills, people are going to come back and buy more. Stuff like that. Instead of like, here's a tub of popcorn and a large drink for $17, and it's like I could buy like 20-piece McNugget, 2 large fries, and a large drink, and I'm still under that price tag. But for me, it's popcorn. When I go to a movie, I always have to have popcorn. So
even if it's like a popcorn, it's like, hey, if a popcorn is a reasonable price, then somebody's going to buy it maybe every other time they go to the movies at least, as opposed to somebody's like, oh, I'm almost never going to buy a popcorn because it's way too expensive. It costs me like $10 for a bucket of popcorn.
See, I'm an idiot. I'm going to buy the popcorn and the drink.
Yeah, you do because you're a sucker.
Yeah.
But and as far as the ticket prices, it's like, yes, they have these things like, AMC A-lists. I know the other chains have theirs, but they're not near me, so I don't know all the details of them. But, as long as I, average one movie a week, I'm only paying like $5 a movie, and that includes IMAX and stuff, although they leave out special events and things like that. But so, the ticket prices with these new services, assuming prices don't go up, which I'm sure they will, that's not an issue. But the other thing that people always say is basically other people.
Yeah.
Because you have people talking to each other in theaters. You have people talking. I've had people answer their phones after it rings in the theater. Like you said, texting. People think it's not a big deal. Oh, I'll hold it down here. Even if I can't see the screen, I still see the light coming up from the screen.
Yeah, because you have your brightness of all the.
And it's extremely distracting to have like a light going on over here.
But here's the biggest problem. Like where I was going with this before I went to a side rant. You're raising the prices for us to come to this theater experience, but you're not paying the actual employees dick. So when you have these patrons that are in there being stupid and douchey and I'm gonna be on my phone, or I got a crying baby in a rated R movie that they shouldn't be in, and all this kind of stuff, there's no point to go and complain because they're getting paid minimum wage. Unless you get an usher who really wants to be, king shit, which I was when I was at the movie theater, nothing's going to happen. You're just going to have to deal with it, which is then like I spent freaking $12 for this movie ticket to watch this movie that I've been, especially for Yumi, I've been excited to see for months on end. And these 3 tool bags behind me or below me want to just make fart jokes or throw shit or be on their phones the entire time, and I can't enjoy this movie. And no one in there that's working gives a crap.
Well, even at the height when theaters were really fully staffed and everything, it's like they'd have ushers like come into the theaters periodically and check on it. And even then, though, people would just stop doing what they're doing while people are in there, and then they'll start again as soon as they leave.
Again, yeah.
But if you want to go complain about it, well, I got to go miss part of my movie so I can go find somebody to tell them come do something about that. But now because, like you said, because of just pay, and and because everybody's scaling down staffing, because there's less attendance, things like that. Like if I want to go, if I wanted to miss part of my movie to go complain to somebody, I walk out in the theater, it's a freaking ghost town.
You can't
It's like
find anybody
there's maybe one person
unless you go to the concession stand,
well,
which they can't do
they're
anything
busy at
because
the
they're
concession
behind.
stand.
Yeah.
The person over here is at the cashier at the ticket counter is busy selling tickets. Maybe you come across a manager, but they're probably running around doing 10 other things as well. And so it's like, even if you can get out there, you're probably not going to find anybody. And like you said, if you found an employee, most likely they're not going to do much, or they're going to walk in there. And like I said, the person will just stop what they're doing while they're in there. And then as soon as they leave, they'll start it up again.
And then it's like they're going to realize you're the one who tattled on us and all this kind of crap. It's just like,
oh, I have a whole story about that.
I've got one too.
My ass about that.
Which this is our episode to do this shit.
Yeah.
I still remember one of my worst movie experiences, and it was recent. It was in the last couple of years. And I know you're gonna eye roll the movie, but it was literally the reason why it was at this theater that I'm locally at, and it was Hereditary. And I was excited to see the movie because everyone was talking it up and everyone was making a big deal about it. And so I went into it. And granted, it's not the horror movie that the trailer sold. It isn't. It's more psychological, guilt, family drama kind of stuff. But everyone was trying to sell it's like scarier than The Exorcist and all this kind of stuff. So opening night, I'm there because I'm ready to watch it and review it and all this shit. And I've got a bunch of college, high school kids in there watching it with me. And it's a slow build. It is. Ari Aster's a slow build director. He's brilliant at it, but not for today's younger clientele. For people who are more prestigious, which I know you hate A24 films, but it's more for the adults horror aspects, not for
a child. I get it. Okay.
Yes, you child. So like as soon as they introduced, I'm blanking on the little girl's name in the movie. As soon as she started doing the tongue flick thing, everyone in the theater decided this movie's boring. I'm going to keep pranking throughout the film and making the tongue flick sound, which then they kept, and they were with girls, and they would, jump scare the girl going, and the girls would scream and then laugh, and oh, you got me. And I was like, shut the fuck up. I can't listen to this movie. And I hated the movie because the experience was so bad that my hate for these people was being portrayed to this film, and I gave it a horrible rating. I gave it a horrible review. I said it was one of the worst films of the year. It's annoying. It's not funny. It's not, because it was all them. And then I had like 3 of my closest friends. I'm gonna call out Erin real quick. She's a friend from middle school, high school, all through. She loved the movie, and she watched my review and listened. And I think I did a written review for that one. Because I didn't have the show yet. And she was like, "Sean, that movie was fantastic. Are you sure that you're not hating on this movie because of your experience? No, because of how bad your experience was." I know you hate the movie, and I was like, she goes, because it's a brilliant film. She goes, "Are you sure you're just not projecting your experience onto the film?" And I was like, you know what? I will. Because I respect her decision, or I respect her opinion. I was like, you know what? I will go see it again, and I'm gonna go like first showing during the week, because no one's going to be in there except for maybe like 3 people. And I did that. I went back and I watched it. And I think I was like maybe one other person was in the theater with me. And I watched it, and I didn't have all these people. Now, granted, I already knew the twist, so I was picking up on things that I hadn't picked up the first time. But yeah, no, it ended up being one of my favorite films of the year. It was a brilliant film. And I know Brian hates the movie. But it was one of those things, like, these people who want to make it all about themselves. Now, in a movie like Jackass Forever, that's perfect, because that's what that movie is. But in these kinds of films, it's like you just ruined this movie for me.
Well, yeah, there's a difference between like Jackass, where you're laughing at a movie where you're supposed to laugh, or screaming in a horror movie when you're supposed to scream. That's part of seeing a horror movie in the theater, is getting scared. But when you're not doing it,
I'm going to put back on the horror part of that. But yeah,
but the people that completely overdo it, or the people that are doing it like you said, scaring each other at moments that aren't part of the movie, that's the ruin it for me. And so inevitably, every time you ask people, they'll say other people are the worst thing about going to movies, because you'll have them talk, you'll have music. I've been sitting where I can see a row of 8 people up ahead of me that are all together. Half the time, if it's guys, they have empty seats between them all, of course, because they don't want people to think they're gay. So
don't touch my shoulder.
Yeah, I have actually seen, and I could tell this person at the end of this row texting with this person at the end of the row, back and forth. Because I would see them like message each other, and I'm like, oh my god, are you kidding me? And
I
so
literally
I totally get it. So if you ask what is one of the main reasons movie theaters are dying, it's because people don't. This makes me sound like a little crunchy. People don't respect the movie theater anymore. But
they
it's
don't
not a
respect
matter of
the art
respecting, like,
of it.
but it's not even a matter of respecting, like, oh, it's the holiness of the movie theater. It's a matter of respecting other people. These people act like they're on their couch at home watching a movie because they hang out with their friends. If you want to sit at home on your living room couch and joke around during a movie, I get it. But when you're here, you're not in your own house. You're with other people. Treat it like such.
Act like civilized people.
Right.
You know, even the people who just want to hook up in a movie theater, it's like, guys, as expensive as movie tickets are, and I'm sure you had to buy the girl a drink and stuff, you probably could have found a cheap hotel and probably would have a lot more fun than you being in the movie theater. But like that's the thing. It's just like what like I think that you guys go here with the intent to ruin everyone else's time because granted, I was at that age where it's like, oh dude, it'd be so cool to fucking go in there and just do it. I never did it because I'm not an asshole. But my best friend, who thought he was the second coming of Tom Green when he was younger, thought it would be fun to do that shit. I'd be like, no, bro, if you're going to a movie with me, you're not going to do that shit. Like, I will literally go out and I will tattle on
My
you.
best friend, who I've gone to movies, he's the main person I go to movies with all the time, and he was always huge into movies. He was basically the same as me. In the last few years, he's gotten to the point where, like, I'll see him like take out his phone and do stuff, or he'll start talking, and I'm just like, we don't need to wait for other people because I'll look at him and go, "What the fuck are you doing?" like, take that outside right now or hang it up.
I almost killed my dad watching Uncharted last week because before the movie started. Now, granted, he's old and he's not smart with his phone on technology. But yet he keeps getting the most newest phones. Like, you don't even know how to use the last 3 phones you've gotten. I turned to him. I go, "Did you kill the audio on your phone?" He goes, "Yeah, I did." And I'm like, "Are you sure?" Yeah. It says it's wrong. What's that?
You're like, "Let me check it."
Well, normally I would, but I took his word for it. And we're not even 2 minutes into the movie. Granted, credits still rolling, and I hear da-na-na, da-na-na, and I'm just like, "You give me that fucking phone." I took the phone, I shut it off, and I kept it in my pocket. I go, no. Like, my mom was there, and she was like,
No.
She's like, "You're lucky I don't slap you across the head." Not to be to him, because he said he turned it off, and then 2 minutes into the movie, bam! And I'm just like, "We are now the most hated people in the city right now. You should feel ashamed." And it's like, no one cared. I did, though.
That's probably part of me wants to yell at him because it's distracting me and bothering me because I hate it, and part of it's I want to make sure everybody sees me yell at him because I'm not. Don't compete with him.
And it was on full fucking blast. It wasn't like a. It was like, "Banana, banana." I was like, really?
Like, why did he be that loud even if you weren't in a movie theater?
His hearing's not that great, but it's just like, come on, man. And sure enough, he turned down the media volume, and he didn't turn down the phone volume. And I was like, "Well, you're not watching YouTube videos right now, are you?" He's like,
Well,
no. Which, I mean, everyone watches like, dude, be nice to your dad. It's like, this is every time we go to a movie theater thing, so it drives me nuts. But it's like I said, and even the movie theater experience. There was one, and you know about the story already. I don't know if I mentioned this on the show before, and I probably have. It was during 2018's Halloween, where, and I don't want to go down a road with this, but yes, it was the. I'm not saying they all do this. It was the stereotypical black girl in a horror movie thing. Clearly, a bunch of girls. It was like, I think, a group of 4 girls. They all came to see Halloween 2018. 3 of the 4 have seen the Halloween franchise before. One of them has never heard of Michael Myers before in her life, which is shocking because there's 2 Mike Myers. Michael Myers is out in the world. And she is deciding to do color commentary through the entire film. Well, who's this guy? Why is he like this? And they're like literally right behind me the whole time. And the whole time I was like, oh my God. Well, why don't they just run? Bitch, run. I would have kicked his ass. And blah, 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 blah. I'm just like.
You know who's surprised me?
I stayed quiet. And I stayed quiet until the 3rd act when we got the big like Jamie Lee Curtis, Michael Myers showdown. And she just, I'm just like, please just, just shut up for 20 more minutes. I know that the movie only had like 20 more minutes left. And like, I think it was the scene where Jamie Lee Curtis finds her daughter's husband in the closet. And she goes, how the fuck did he get up there? He was outside. I go, oh my God, shut the fuck up. Like, please, shut up. If you don't want, you've talked this entire damn movie, please just be quiet. There's no need to ask questions right now. Just watch the damn movie. Shut up. And you just heard 4 people go, and all her friends, because the thing's like, her friends throughout the movie were going, shut up. You don't have to ask any questions right now. Like, they were great. And then as soon as I got done, they go, that was going to happen eventually. You're lucky it lasted this long. And I was like, good. I don't feel like an asshole, because even her friends were like,
now you just wish you'd done that about an hour and a half earlier.
I so fucking did. I so did. I was so worried because
like, I didn't think it would work, so I would have done it earlier.
Exactly. I was like, I didn't want to be that guy where it was just like, how dare you? I was like, but no, I'm sorry. Like, you have talked for an hour and 10 minutes straight. Shut the fuck
You know
up.
who's surprisingly bad at that? I mean, people always say that teenagers are the worst at talking during movies, and they absolutely are. Not all of them. Again, not all of them.
Not all of them.
The vast majority of people you find being obnoxious, it's the people on social media and texting and talking and stuff. Who is surprisingly also very bad at that are old people. I swear to God, anytime I go to a movie and there's like some old people behind me, I'm like, oh, this is going to suck. And sure enough, because part of it might be like somebody explaining something to the other person or because they didn't hear something. But a lot of time it's just like, oh, yeah, remember we saw that guy in that other movie? And it's like, and like not even whispering half the time. It's practically full volume.
That's that girl from that one movie, from that one thing. You remember? Oh, you remember? It's from this. Like,
or they'll be talking about, oh, you know what? Afterwards, we should go over to Cracker Barrel, and, you know, whatever it is. And it's just, I swear, half the time they're definitely not whispering. Sometimes it's like half volume. Sometimes
they think they're
volume.
whispering, but they're talking at normal volume.
Sometimes it's full volume, but it's just like it's weird because like you don't really think of that. But then I don't know. Again, maybe because they're the kind of people maybe don't go to the movies that often, so they don't think about it. I don't know. But whenever I'm in a theater with a couple of people behind me, sure enough, they're all the worst talkers in the whole theater.
There was one time, and I shouldn't be proud of this, but I am proud.
You beat up an old woman?
No. Oh. Now we're transitioning to kids. We're coming after everybody in this episode. It was a I want to say it was either the remake of Friday the 13th or it was Freddy vs. Jason. I want to say it was the remake of Friday the 13th. There was this like kid. He was like 3 or 4 years old, and he was running down the aisles, screaming. He was throwing shit. He kept running in front of me, and he would trip each time, and he would just like glare at me. Like, I'm not even tripping him. He's tripping over his own fucking feet. I wish I tripped him and just knocked his ass out. But I was just, and I'm looking at his parents. His parents just watching the movie. Like, they've tuned it out because they're probably tuned it out at home. And like, you're hearing people go, shh, someone get this kid. No one's doing anything. We had people come in, like ushers, talk to the parents. Parents like, watch the movie. Kids still just going nonstop. First off, it's a rated R film. Nudity, gore, whatever. 3-4-year-old kids should not be in there. Finally, halfway through the film, this kid jumps up, because I'm watching this one by myself. This kid jumps up on the seat next to me. Why? I don't know. And he's jumping up and down. And he starts bopping me on the head. I finally grabbed the kid by the fucking shirt. And I looked at him. I go, do you know who that is? And luckily, Voorhees was on screen. He's like, that's Jason. I go, do you know at the end of each one of these movies, he picks someone in the audience to kill? I voted for you. Shut up. Sit down. If you cry or make any more noise, I'm going to hold you down and let Jason kill you. Leave me alone. And the kid just went, leave. And the kid fucking ran. And I heard like 5 people around me go, dude, that was fucking awesome. I didn't do that earlier. And I was like, cool. I'm the hero of the day for these 5 people around me who heard that. But I was like, I want to feel bad for what I did.
Oh, not. No.
Because that kid deserved it. And the parents just didn't give a shit. And it's like, look, the movie theaters is not babysitting. If you want to come out to a movie, granted, I don't have kids. I don't. So I get it. When you have young kids, you want to go out. You want to go see these movies. You want to go. I get that. Babysitters are expensive. I'm sure of it. Movie theaters need a daycare to just dump these kids off. But it's like, bringing them into a dark theater and expecting them to sit down quietly for an hour and a half, 2 hours at a time, even for a kid's movie, is hard to do. But I have to kind of bring in your judgment as parents when you bring them into R-rated horror films. It's like,
Oh, you got to know that they're not being controlled anything they watch at home
no.
either. I mean, whatever it is, but because it's like, yeah, I mean, I've been in who knows how many horror films or movies with like, I have like lots of sex or something, and there's some families come in, like some parents, and they got like a 13-year-old kid with them and a 8-year-old kid with them and a 3-year-old kid with them and a baby, and I'm just like, and they're all watching the movie. I'm just like, really?
You do realize that literally everyone in the theater has stopped what they're doing and they're all looking at you.
Yeah.
We don't like you because you're doing this. How horrible parents are you have to be
Yeah.
to bring these kids into 50 Shades of Grey?
Well, and then there's theaters like AMC has a policy. I think it's nationwide, but definitely at my theater,
But
where it's R-rated movies after I think 6 p.m.
it's like
There's
6 or 7, yeah.
no kids under 6 allowed, even with the parent.
But once again, we run into the same situation. Who's going to police
But
this?
that's just it. I've seen them come in there, and like I saw a kid come in like, oh shit, but the kid was quiet. I'm like, okay, that's bad parenting, but whatever, it doesn't bother me. But then I've had other cases where like some kid was being obnoxious, and I actually go and luckily I actually know one of the managers of my theater, that like the head manager. So whenever she's there, I can talk to her directly. I'm like, look, there's this family in there, and I know you have this policy. And she's like, yeah, I'm not sure we can really do anything about that though. I'm like, you can tell them to fucking leave.
Yeah,
It's your policy. It's on the ticket. It's on the website they bought the ticket from. It's
like literally today at work. I work at a sporting goods store, and we have this rule with baseball bats because baseball season's coming. And so people are buying bats. And we have plastic wrapping around the bats. I go, look, as soon as you remove this plastic wrapping, we can't return these bats anymore. It's a stupid policy. I don't like it, but that's the rules. And this nice lady came in with her little kid, T-ball, and she's like, she took the plastic out. Can we still return it? And I was like, I want to, because I get it. The bat doesn't look damaged. The bat looks clean. But because the plastic is off, my manager will rip me a new one and I told him, I'm sorry, I can't. I would love to, but they won't let me. And all the managers were in a meeting, so I couldn't oh, hey guys, come here. No.
Back me up.
Yeah, but they would have said no. And it's like, look, that is policy. It is written here. You aren't reading the rules. So tough shit.
Yeah.
If they complain to corporate, well, my people were following the rules. You're not going to win this argument, Karen. You are bad. You broke the rules. You got caught. And then even this is probably the most like jock bully I've ever gotten was, and I sent a message to you during the movie. Like, granted, it was in the trailers, but I remember I messaged you this. It was Shang-Chi last year. You remember this?
I probably will once you start telling me, but I don't remember.
So I'm in Shang-Chi theater. It wasn't sold out because but it was about 50 to 60% full. Dead center of the theater. Movie has started. This guy has his it's not a phone. It's a fucking tablet. He's reading the Shang-Chi comic as the movie Shang-Chi's playing. How much of a fucking nerd do you have to be in a comic book theater? And instead of watching the comic book movie, you were reading a comic book about said.
Well, if it was during the trailers, maybe he's just preparing for it.
No, it was the movie. Like, the movie had started, and he's reading the Shang-Chi comic. I'm just like, get the fuck out. Get out.
That's the kind of thing you do at home. Like, I want to read the comic along with this movie to see how it compared. You don't do that in the theater.
No, especially a tablet. Granted, we also had, the kids stuff where they're like, here's a tablet, play it with your headphones on. Oh. Cool. But I can still see that they're watching some kid show down on the
light and distraction. Yeah.
Yeah, like, I love being at the top level. I like being on the top level because every time I'm not on the top level, I got douchebags throwing candy at me from behind. Like, there was one day they were just winging that shit, and they didn't hit me because they were horrible throwers. But I could feel the behind me. I was like, I swear to God, if one of these hits me, I'm gonna go off. And I told my dad, I was like, Dad, I'm gonna get arrested if they hit me. I know where they're coming from, and I'm going right for them if they bing me. Because there's about a good 15 minutes of that film, I could feel they were trying. And I was trying to sink down a little more because I was like, I'm just trying to diffuse this. They're not going to hit me. But I was like, I swear if they hit me, I'm going to go off. And that's the problem, is that now we've got these situations with HBO Max, Netflix, Prime, Hulu, where after 30 days, 60 days, whatever, Vudu as well, where you can watch these movies at home. And if you can stand, now, like I said, there's movies like Spider-Man No Way Home and Batman and it's like you can't make it that long without getting spoiled, or you just don't care. Where if you can wait that long, why not wait at home?
Well, that's the thing
Why?
is with the whole COVID thing and all these companies, with HBO Max being the main one because they put everything for free on HBO Max,
Yeah,
all their theatrical ones, day and date, and then you have other ones who have
Disney Plus
great.
doing like the all
Well,
premiere.
Disney Plus is one where you can see in theater, or you can pay an additional price and get to watch it on Disney Plus. And
As
there's
many times as you want. It's basically
several others who are doing this vastly reduced window where after as few as
a week.
anywhere from 17 days to I think 45 days is the standard for a couple studios, is like now you can, they'll put it on either their streaming service for free, whether it be Peacock or Paramount or
Yeah.
Disney or whatever, or they'll put on this premium VOD, which sometimes is rental, sometimes sales, where 3 weeks after it's at the theater, you can already pay $20 and buy it and own it and watch how many times you want for free, which for so many people, they're just like, yeah, I can wait. And I mean, yeah, there's movies that you're like, oh, I got to see this right away in theaters. Well, don't want to be spoiled. But the people who care about it being spoiled are the people that were already going to go see it opening night. They're not going to wait to watch it. So it's a whole thing of because I mean, it used to be something would come out in theaters and it would be as much as a year later before it hits home video, and that's just to rent it.
Yeah, at earliest 6 months.
Yeah, in early 6 months, and very few would come out straight for sale. Occasionally they would, but then with DVD came to the point where pretty much everything came out straight for sale. There wasn't like that rental period before things came out for sale, and then but even then it was like 6 months, and then it got to be a little less 6 months. 3 months was kind of the standard for the longest time, and now it's like a month and a half tops on some of these movies. And the thing is with COVID and with sending all these things straight to these services like this, is there's no going back. I mean, yeah, HBO Max isn't doing their day and date stuff anymore, but even they're doing reduced windows. Like the Batman is eligible, is going to be on HBO Max in like 45 days.
Isn't it like a month later?
It's like 45 days, yeah.
Yeah, 45 days.
So they're doing short. So people know that, and they're going to wait. And this is when people talk about box office discussions all the time, and they talk about, oh well, inflation. So these movies, but you got to take into account so many other factors, whether it be whereas back then movies had no competition, it was just movies that whereas the movie going environment, you had to see something in the theater versus watching on your crappy little TV at home. And nowadays, when you have this thing where people know, I don't have to wait a year. If I don't want to see it in theater, I can wait 45 days or less and watch it at home. And so that affects things. But since COVID, there's really no going back because people are now spoiled by that. They're like,
they're accustomed to it now.
They're like, oh, even if it's not out there for free yet, I can just wait 45 days and I'll be able to watch for free somewhere or rent it. And even then, I might not rent it because it'll probably be a very short time after that before we'll show up free on a streaming service somewhere. Like Disney Plus, they have their premium ones, but even then,
because you and I, we had this argument with Mulan and Raya the Last Dragon stuff. I was like, I'm gonna do the premiere thing. You're like, why would you spend $20 or was it $30 or whatever at home when you can go see it in theaters? I go, well, because by the time I buy my ticket for me and my dad and we get popcorn and drinks, I'm actually saving money staying at home.
Yeah, if you're seeing it with multiple people, see, a lot of times it's just me going to the movie theater. It didn't make sense for me. Plus, I did want to see things. I did want to see things in the theater, but I totally get the people who are like, if I have a family or even just a couple people who are going to see the movie with me, then yeah, it's going to be cheaper. Because now in the case of Disney Plus, it was kind of weird because you pay for it, even though it's going to be free on Disney Plus in like 2 months, but you got it for those 2 months early for what you paid for it. So, like you said, it balances out with what you would have paid for tickets, things like that.
Yeah.
But the problem is, though, a lot of the people don't understand that these are certain studios or certain movies that do these kind of things. Because, like, I remember hearing people when, like, I think it was Scream came out, and they're like, wait a minute, how come I can watch, I don't know what it was, Marry Me or whatever last one came out, HBO Max, Matrix Resurrections. How come I can watch those at home, but I have to go to theater to see Scream? Why can't I watch that one at home?
There were so many people when Spider-Man No Way Home came out. Everyone goes, I can't believe why we can't watch this at home.
They're like, why isn't this in Disney Plus? Like, first of all, it's not Disney.
Okay. Yeah, it's Sony. And number two, look at the box office. This is a theater experience. You need to go see this in a theater. I don't want to go to a theater. I want to watch this at home. Well, tough
then
shit.
You can wait. The problem is
it comes out.
Like, I want to be able to watch it at home right now. And that opens the question of, is that the direction things are going? Will movies be exclusive to theaters anymore, because so many of them now are going straight to streaming services or straight to VOD or whatever it is. Like you said, rom-coms in theaters is practically unheard of anymore. Even comedies in theaters, you don't see that many of them come out in theaters anymore. It used to be comedies were just as prevalent, if not more so, than like action and
Like I said, I was literally trying to think, and I was going to ask you to help me with this. So besides Jackass, what was the last comedy in theaters that everyone was like, let's go see this? I can't remember. Now, Chris
No.
and I go see stuff all the time.
I just remember in the past couple of years, like when something like Game Night came out, and even that's a couple of years old. But just as an example,
Yeah, like the last thing I thought was Game Night. That was 2011.
but just an example, when that came out, it was like whoa, there's a comedy and it's in theaters, and I get to go see it. You don't see that much anymore.
Tag, that was another one, and it's like I can't remember. Like same thing with rom-coms. Now, great, like we had Crazy Rich Asians, and like before Crazy Rich Asians, it's like I can't really remember the last rom-com.
Yeah.
Outside of like stuff that got released around Valentine's Day and Christmas, like I cannot remember the last like summer like rom-com movie, and it's because no one goes to see him in theaters anymore, which sucks because they all just want to watch him at home on repeat on Netflix.
Well, that's it. It used to be like that's date night. You go see a rom-com with your date. Now it's like Netflix and chill. So go see that instead. But then it comes down to
Disney
then
Plus and but yeah.
You started touching this earlier, and I kind of put a pin in it because they're kind of building up to the future movies is.
Yeah.
But that is, what movies are going to be considered theater worthy? Will it just be the action blockbusters? Will it just be the comic book movies, the Jurassic Parks, the things like that? I mean, for me personally, I can watch most dramas and honestly most comedies and things like that at home, and it doesn't change experience for me at all. So, I mean, if putting just those big movies in theaters is kept movie theaters going instead of trying to show a lot of smaller films and failing and things, I get it. I mean, yes, it's fun to go into a theater with a group like Jackass, for example, with a group and watch it. And so I would hope that there would be the option. But the problem is, as long as if they start doing things both ways and there's the option of at home or in theaters, especially with the younger generation, so many of them are going to choose to stay home that people aren't going to go to the theaters, and it's not going to be a community experience anyway because the theater's going to be mostly empty.
And see, and this is the other side of the other side of the thing as well. Coin is that everyone's talking about box office. Now, granted, Spider-Man was. I don't think anyone expected Spider-Man to be as big as it was. We all expected Endgame to be what, but Endgame was before COVID and all that. But I don't think anyone expected Spider-Man No Way Home to be as big as it was. But you're looking at like, oh, Wonder Woman 84 was a box office fail. Matrix was a box office fail. In the Heights was a box office fail. Like, yeah, but you released them on HBO Max and in theaters. People are going to watch it if they have the choice. Watch it at home for free because you've already paying for the service, or spend $20 to watch it in a theater. Unless you're someone like Brian, who is like, I want to see this on the screen. Those people aren't going to go out, or they just don't have HBO Max. And then you're like, oh, they were a box office fail. Were they though? Because how can you equate? Like everyone's like, oh, the fuck, what was it? Don't Look Up. It was like, was the most watched hours played Netflix movie. Cool. Does that equate to money?
Yeah, people can sit at home and watch for free. It's like if there's tons of movies I'll watch for free on TV that I wouldn't pay to go see.
But so it's like, but that's also like the worry of what's going on right now is because if you're going to be releasing a lot of stuff on streaming services, how's that going to affect how movies are made? Because I'm sorry, I don't see studios shelling out $100 to $200 million to make a film if they're not going to be releasing it in theaters and making said money back.
Well, that's just it. Box office numbers have gone down across the board with everything, and it's like not even just ones that also got released on stream at the same time, but like I said, with the whole you can't put the genie back in the bottle thing with COVID, people now have just got this expectation of like, oh, well, if I can just wait a couple weeks and I'll be able to watch it at home, so I'm not going to bother going to the theater. And so box office for movies that even if they're not released immediately on streaming, even those box office I think are hurt by people who they're no longer in the habit of going to the theater. They're like, I don't need it anymore.
The only way I could see this potentially working and having both sides be okay, and I still don't think there's no possible way they'll ever do this, but there are certain ones like Apple and HBO and maybe even Netflix could do this, and I think would save it is if you're going to take a film like Matrix, Resurrections, Dune, Godzilla, Kong, all this kind of stuff, you're going to put it on HBO Max same day and in theaters. HBO Max or whomever needs to pay for 50% of the movie's budget. So that way, because if you're going to take about 50% of the clientele away from the theater where they're going to make the money, you need to pay 50% of what it costs to make the movie. So that way, these films can survive and get made more of. Because if 200 million was to make Matrix Resurrections, I'm just throwing that number out. I'm not saying that's how much it costs, but it probably is. But 75% of the people who watched it at home watch it go, oh, hey, Matrix Resurrections sucked. That's going to stop people from going to see it in theaters because, oh, well, it sucked. Well, I don't want to pay. I'll just go watch HBO Max, or I'll go to someone's house and watch HBO Max and see it there.
Even
it's going to kill the entire box office. Oh, these films, yeah, we're not going to get another Matrix movie.
And what streaming with even HBO Max, things like that, has also done, it has killed largely repeat viewings. I saw Kong versus Godzilla in a theater because I wanted to see an IMAX screen, two big guys going at it. But I'm like, you know what? For viewings 2, 3, and 4, I can do those at home. Where it used to be, I'd go see a movie in theater 3, 4 times.
And that's the thing within the Heights. You saw it in theaters. I watched it at home. You and I both, I think, watched In the Heights 5 times on top of that. So 6 times almost total for both of us. We watched them all at home. Had HBO Max not have been a thing, granted, I probably wouldn't have seen
it. Theater, I'd have gone back to the theater 5 times to see that.
Yeah, you would have. I maybe would have gone back and seen it once.
Maybe not 5, but yeah.
But that's each time. That is money that's being taken away from that film. And they go, oh, well, In the Heights made no money. No, it probably would have. But you guys killed it because it's not a Dune or a Matrix Resurrections. It is I mean, granted, they were trying to get the Hamilton, the man will win, and all this kind of stuff. It's like, yes, but he's Hamilton's Hamilton. They don't need the money. But it's like In the Heights is a one-of-a-kind kind of film, musical, putting it on a streaming service and then putting it in the theaters. People are going to want to watch it at home because they want to sing along with it. They can't sing along in the theater because people are going to go, shut the hell up, kind of thing, unless you do a sing-along one like they did with like Mamma Mia.
Sometimes there'll be certain screenings, yeah.
Exactly. So it's like, well, no shit, In the Heights didn't make its money back. You killed it before it had a chance. And like Dune and Godzilla Kong, yeah, there's the theater experience of it, but I guarantee you it lost probably about a good 100 mil that it would have gotten had it not been on HBO Max. And that's the thing now is like when studios start to make these movies now, are we going to start going back to the 90s and 80s where if it's not the big budget like comic book movies or like the Dunes, Fast and the Furiouses, Jurassic World, stuff like that you're only going to have like this 20, 30 million budget.
Well, that's just it.
Like the indie phrase.
It used to be that there was like movies of all sizes. Like I remember, especially Disney and Touchstone in Hollywood, their subsidiaries used to be big on this, but all the studios were. They'd put out a lot of these mid-budget movies, the Cool Runnings and things like that. They weren't, they weren't independent movies, but they weren't blockbusters. But they'd put out just tons of these movies, and they were great to see in theaters. But nowadays, that's the kind of thing you will only see show up on streaming and things like that. Now it's like there's basically blockbusters and there's independent films and almost nothing in between. And so I think that with what you're talking about, with that, these movies aren't making box office, so they're going to be even closing the purse strings even more on those budgets. So it's like you're either going to have a really tiny budget unless you're one of our tentpole films, and even then, I got to wonder how much it's going to scale them back. Because yes, I mean it shows that people still want to go to the movies with Spider-Man No Way Home.
Well, not even Spider-Man No Way Home. I mean, you kind of go in the mindset of like, is the movie star dead? It's like you had Tom Cruise, you had Will Smith. Tom Holland is box office set. I mean, look at Uncharted. Uncharted's doing fantastic, and then he, had No Way Home, and then Tom Holland has now become the ipso facto movie star. Like he's box office gold right now. Before that, it was Chris Pratt and that. But they didn't have to deal with the streaming stuff. Tom Holland's doing it with streaming. But that's the thing too, is that like it's killing effectively the superstars as well. I mean, Will Smith went to Netflix with Bright, and they were like, Bright's one of the most watched movies of all time. Cool, but did they have? You're not. They're gonna make it Bright too, but I guarantee you that budget's going to be considerably less.
Yeah. Well, and even when we talk about like Tom Holland, I don't think he's like a movie star the way that like Tom Cruise and Will Smith were in the time when people were like, we'll go see any movie. I think Uncharted and Spider-Man were hits because of their franchises thing, not necessarily because of the star. But that aside, the big thing about Spider-Man No Way Home is it made a shitload of money. Obviously, it's like what, number 7? No, number 3.
It's number 3 all time now.
Something like that. if it came out with a normal year's competition, it wouldn't. It might have cracked top 10, but honestly, it had essentially 2 months of nothing to compete with.
Well, I mean, granted, January usually is a non-compete month, so whatever big Christmas movies that
But
come
more and more
out,
they start releasing. I mean, we
I
had Bad Boys. One of the last January releases we had was Bad Boys for Life. Even just other action movies, even other things in the same genre that would have come out. We had Black Panther came out in February when it came out, things like that. But like they have like we had it had months basically on its own to make. I'm not saying it would have made a ton of money. It would, but I think that if it had had actual competition, it would not, like in a normal year, it would not have made much
mean,
money.
it did. It had Matrix, but the
And
Matrix
that's
bombed, and it was also on HBO Max.
it was HBO Max.
Yeah,
But that aside, is the point is that box office, except for the fluke like Spider-Man, is suffered, and it's probably not coming back to levels it was, at least not for 90% of films.
and
So
you think about this too with Tom Holland. So I mean, his big budget films, Uncharted, Spider-Man's, all that, Avengers type stuff, obviously in theaters. His non-movies of those, Cherry, The Devil Inside Me, streaming. They went straight to see it. Chaos Walking was just kind of an enigma. They just had to dump that somewhere. But it's like if he's making a big tentpole film, movie theaters, like, I mean, Chris Pratt's Tomorrow War, that's a movie theater movie. That's not a watch on Amazon Prime at home film. It's like, what are you doing? Like, that's a July 4th Alien film. Like, that's box office gold. Now, granted, like I said, that was middle of COVID, but it's just like some of these movies, you're like,
well,
you
and
just
here's part
don't
of the
have.
problem is that the movies that are coming out now are still almost completely movies that were in production in the pre-COVID era. They're just ones that got pushed back and pushed back, pushed back. They're finally releasing these things out slowly, a few at a time. So most of, especially your big movies that are coming out now, are still movies that were greenlit and budgeted and produced in before or during the COVID. And so it's like in the future with movies that they're actually greenlighting now. So like the next couple of years of movies we're going to see, you're going to see budgets come down.
Mhm.
And whereas something like Tomorrow War, I mean, yeah, that was made for theaters, and then they decided, oh, we're going to put that on streaming. But now, if they're going to make movies for streaming, when they make movies for streaming,
You can tell.
you can tell. And
Yeah.
now you can, I mean, because you can tell when they're definitely, even if it's a big action blockbuster.
For example, Red Notice.
Red Notice was supposed to have the biggest budget of any streaming movie ever, and that just looked like a made for Netflix movie.
I mean, I'm not saying it looked like shit, but for the names behind it,
yeah, the entire movie looked like it's shot in front of a green screen.
Yeah.
It wasn't great. So I'm really worried that budget's going to come down, and then it becomes, well, if they're going to be like that, how many of the things that now that all the studios, not all of them, most of them have their own streaming services, things like that, which they want to push, they're going to put most of their content there. Do only the big movies come out in theaters? And then you come up with the idea of like, well, if theaters can't survive on just, a couple movies, 2 movies a month or something like that. So then will theaters survive? Will more theaters close? Will they raise their prices more? I remember at one point, was it James Cameron? Probably, because he's always behind this kind of stuff. James Cameron, I think, was one of the guys who was talking about, maybe at some point we should consider that movie tickets should, be priced differently depending on the movie you're seeing. Like he's basically saying, hey, you're going to see this $200 million blockbuster I made. Your ticket's going to cost you $25. Oh, you're going to see this little independent movie that cost $1 million to make? You can get in for $5. And it's like at some point to do that kind of thing. There are people that are talking about how movie theaters will become more like.
But then you'll do the thing where you'll pay for the indie movie, and then you'll just sneak into that.
And then there's people that said that eventually maybe movie theaters become more like going to see like live theater, like Broadway kind of thing, where
like
it's going to be a super expensive ticket. You can have this nice seat, you can have this dining experience, you can have the IMAX screen, you have all this stuff. So you're going to have to pay premium for this premium experience. Like that's not what I want. I just want the movie. So if it became like you have to pay $50 to go see a movie, I don't care if it's Jurassic World Dominion. I have a beautiful giant screen TV at home. I have a great sound system. I'll watch that shit at home.
And then once again, though, now granted the prices are higher, you would think this wouldn't still be an issue. You're still going to have the asshole people who just want to go in and ruin everyone's time. Either they're going to sneak in because, like I said, the ushers are not going to watch tickets. They're not going to stop people from going into those movies. And people are going to go in and ruin someone's time. And that's my main worry coming into the Batman. It's 3 hours long. I love that runtime. I would love that runtime more if I could watch it at home, because I'm afraid of someone bringing a kid in because it's Batman. And this is definitely not. I've already seen some of the
And
little.
from all accounts, it's a slower Batman film. They just say
Slower
it's not,
Batman film, and it is not a Batman film for kids.
yeah, it's a
But
detective, dark, gritty thing. Yeah.
but it's not. That's not going to stop people from going Batman and bring kids in. Kids are not going to sit still for 3 hours, let alone a slow prodding Batman film that's
Yeah.
3 hours long. And then you get the comic book nerds and the people who want to come in and just ruin everyone's comic book nerds experience, like the douchebag customers, for 3 hours trying to keep everyone in check for 3 hours for this film. Endgame was was its own thing. Same thing with Spider-Man. You had such an overwhelming comic book love for it that like that whole theater would come together to take one person out if they're ruining the experience.
Yeah.
Batman, I would think, would be in the same boat, but this is not Endgame. This is not Spider-Man No Way Home. We don't know this Batman film yet. This movie could be fantastic, or it could not be everyone's cup of tea, which means we could run into a Hereditary situation where you promised me this kind of thing, it's this kind of thing, so now I'm going to ruin everyone else's experience while watching this movie because this isn't what I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And especially with the way the world is today, you have more and more people that are like that this could be a potential. But that's why I'm seeing it at the very, very earliest, which is 3:00 on Thursday. You get to see it Wednesday night, which you potentially could run into that issue for you. I'm going Thursday during the day, hoping that most of those douchebag people are going to be at school or in classes in college or whatever, and they're not going to be at that one. Because I guarantee you that 7:00, 9:00 show, that's where they're going to start showing up. So that's what I'm hoping, is that I can make it through the 3 hours and not be wanting to wring someone's neck while watching this movie. And where you're going to see it Wednesday night, lucky you. You're
I
probably
went the Tuesday night one, but they charged more for that, and it wasn't eligible for A-list. So I'm like, I'll wait till Wednesday.
Yeah. But anything else?
No, I mean, obviously we don't have the solutions here.
No, I
It's
mean,
just a matter of this is largely a venting show. That
it is.
chat about shows. It makes me sad that
It is sad.
that movie theaters are dying, that most people don't care if movie theaters are dying. They'd be fine. There's people who are like, oh, I'd be happy if they did because then I can just watch everything at home. And it's, I mean, everybody has their own opinions, but I would hate if that option for people who wanted to see it in the theaters went away. And the only solutions there are not solutions any theater would take, because really they need to drop prices on tickets and concessions. They're not going to do that because that would just
And they need to pay the people in there more to not necessarily care about the job more, but to feel I'm getting paid this much. I need to actually take this job seriously. Like when I moved down here, I actually applied to be a manager at this movie theater, and because I have experience, they literally said you're overqualified. We can't match what you would probably be worth our pay. I'm like, so you don't want someone who actually is good at the job. You just want someone that you can pay shitty to run the theater. Maybe you need to rethink your business strategy here, because once again, but it's like, oh, it's a movie theater, everyone's going to come to the movies. Not anymore. Yeah. And that's why we're shooting this episode, is because outside of the Spider-Man No Way Homes and even Jackass and Batman this weekend, I can't remember the last time I was in a sold-out theater. Now, a lot of that could be pandemic, but it's because the experience is tainted. It's not fun. It's not, you can have these brief little moments like Endgame, stuff like that, where you're like, this is why I love going to the movies. But more times than not, it's why did I come out? Why did I waste my money to come out to this? And it's so you can have those moments like the Avengers Assemble, or Mjolnir being raised by Cap, or Andrew Garfield and Toby coming through the portal. Or with me, like we talked about in our last month's episode about why we love movies, me seeing Jurassic Park as a kid, and then every time they re-release Jurassic Park in the theaters, I have to go see it because Jurassic Park on the big screen is magical. the Jurassic Worlds, they're great, but the first film is a magical moving experience. And I was always, every time they re-release it in a new format or whatever, I have to see it if it's around me. And I don't want that to go away. Honestly, you know what they really need to do? I know we were about to end this, but I just felt like they need to bring back the drive-ins. Drive-ins are still out there, but they need to bring back the drive-ins because
there's
cars, and we can be as loud as I want in our cars, and you're not interrupting the people next to you, and you're not doing this and that. They need to bring back, because there's literally an area in my, like, right across the street from the movie theater. To the right, there's like a Lowe's, and there's like this whole open field. And I was like, you know what? If I ever won the lottery, and like I was like rich, first off, I'd open a bowling alley in this town. But number two, I would buy this set of land, and I would set up a drive-in. And this was, of course, when the theater was shut down and everything. I would set up a drive-in. And I guarantee you we'd make bank. Because, I'm sorry, like, I still remember the last drive-in experience I ever had. It was 1993. It was Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. That was the last drive-in film I saw. And I miss it. Because you can sit there with your loved one cuddled up under a blanket, and who knows what you're doing under there. I mean, if the cars are rocking, you might know what's going on. But it's not ruining my experience because I've got the speaker in my car. I can watch my movie, and I can do what I want to do and watch my film and enjoy it. And I'm not being everyone else can be on their phones and stuff like that. It's not bothering me. I'm watching the film in my experience.
Most movies I wouldn't want to see that way just because, you're not seeing the best picture in a drive-in, projected on theater. So I don't know if I'd want to see movies first time that way, but depending on the movie.
You know what would be a really cool thing they could figure out? I think technology today, they could really pull it off, is if you go to a drive-in, but you don't have the drive-in screen, but you can get kind of like this film, and you can put it over your, listen, and you can put it over your windshield. And that projects the screen on your windshield. Oh, you're laughing, but that
I can't imagine the technology that would need to exist for that to happen.
Oh, come on. It's totally, now, granted, you couldn't do it like in, where I'm at, but you can, that is not, I find it very hard.
There's still demand for drive-in theaters because, like, there used to be all over my area, years and years ago. Now there are a couple drive-ins, like, within driving distance of me, but I'm talking like I have to drive like an hour or 45 minutes to get to these things. And even then, you have limited selection. I don't know how old and run down some of these places are because I haven't been to any of them forever. But I mean, there's still some demand for it. Like during COVID, when theaters were closed, they started doing like these pop-up drive-in theaters in like Walmart parking lots and stuff, where you could go and drive in and they'd show a movie on some giant screen they had. And that was older stuff, of course.
Yeah.
But then they don't even do speakers in the windows even at the end, before the drive-in theaters left my area, they had already started doing the thing where like you could tune into a certain radio station or something, or clip something to your antenna, and you play it through your car sound system. So you get.
That'd be better than the little speaker thing. I
yeah.
Unless your speakers.
So I mean, there's still demand for that, but I think I would love it if that existed, if only to get some of the people that want to hang out with their friends. Maybe they'll go to that and leave me alone in my theater.
Yes. We're just trying to find ways to get the douchebags out. Like, go hang out in your car and
basically
smoke weed in your car and do whatever the hell you want, and not bother the people actually in the movie.
Can we just have like a velvet rope and like somebody has to decide who they want to let in and not let into a theater?
Honestly, that's what I did when I worked at the movie theater. But I was the guy who stood in front of the rated R doors, and if you acted chill, I'd let you in. If you acted like a douchebag, you can't come in. Because I don't know, or if you got the tickets, I'm gonna let you in, but I'm gonna be checking in and watching you like a hawk. Because I had no problem ruining your night and kicking your ass out of the theater. But not everyone is like that, and sadly, no one today in a movie theater is like that because they're getting paid $8 an hour, and by today's standards, that's not enough money really to give a shit. You're there to clean up the mess,
and that's if there was enough people you could even have somebody check on a theater.
Yeah. Now they'll come in, they'll walk across the theater, go to a checkout board, check that they walked in, and then walk right back out. It's like
they don't even walk into my theaters. I go entire movies without even checking.
They do. You'll see them walk in, and they'll just walk across the screen to a checkboard and check it, and then walk out. And
not
it's
mine. Don't even do that anymore.
Like, so what was the point of that? Like, you didn't look at the theater, you didn't look at the screen, you didn't look at the people sitting. You just walked in, checked, and walked out. I was like, there was no point to that.
Yeah.
But yeah, nonetheless, like I said, like Brian said, this is a vent episode. This was something that, like you said, you were talking about it with a few of your employees, and it was something that you wanted to talk about and get off your chest. This is something we probably would have talked about eventually, but I figured, screw it, let's talk about it now. We hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I'm sure a lot of you that do watch these probably feel the same way that Brian and I do, and you felt the pain that we've shared some of our stories with tonight. But feel free to give this a like, share, subscribe, to the channel. Stay up to date with all the latest videos pop up on the Movie Crusaders, and of course, don't forget to follow us on all the social media outlets you see below. Obviously, like we said, the Batman comes out this week. We'll have our non-spoiler and spoiler review. I'll do the non-spoiler. Brian will join me for the spoiler review, unless for some reason he feels like he doesn't want to talk about a 3-hour Batman movie, which he said that, and I was like, shut up, you're going to do it. We also have the Batman Fantasy Dreamcast, where we are basically going over Batman characters who are not in the film, at least to our knowledge, and we are casting them and who we would cast in future Batman films of this world with these characters. That was a fun episode that Brian and I had. We are going to do more of those with different films, but the Batman was kind of our first one doing that. Next week, we will have our actor, actress, director showcase, where we're going to be talking about Bruce Willis, Sandra Bullock, and Edgar Wright. And then the following week, we're going to be doing our award show, which we're still trying to think of the name for the awards. I'm still waiting on Brian to give me some good ideas for that, where we're going to be going over our favorite comedy, favorite horror, and whatever other fun categories we can come up with. And then on the 25th, we will be doing our Movie Crusaders Oscars, where we're going to be going over our predictions for who's going to win the Oscars on the 27th and who we would have nominated for those roles. Now, a lot of them could be the same people that were nominated, but I'm sure there's a few that were like, that person, no, this person belongs in this category, or Best Picture. Spider-Man No Way Home, probably for Best Picture for us in both of those categories. But those are all the videos we got up, plus obviously any other movies that come out, there'll be reviews for. So we hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I'm Sean Waskroot. That is Brian Michaels. We are the Movie Crusaders. And until next time, in case we don't see you, good morning, good afternoon, and good night, Movie Crusaders.
You're still here. It's over. Go home.